right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Slime. And it's October, so we pretty much all know what that means. We're gonna be hitting you guys with some Halloween themed episode. Probably talking a lot of horror this month, a lot of scary movies. So we decided this week we're gonna talk about one of the classics, one of the kings, right, Diego?
To kick things off because it's spooky season and we like to kind of get in the mood and talk about some movies that kind of fit that vibe. I think we'll talk about some that are, I guess, scary like today's are, and then some that are just, I like to play fast and loose with the definition of Halloween movie. It doesn't have to be scary. It's just got to fit into a certain vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, point is, I'm pumped to talk about this classic, very influential movie.
Right, me too. So we decided to check out the very first Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. And this was my first time watching it. And I actually was pleasantly surprised, and I actually liked it a lot. What did you think of it?
Look, I mean, I loved it. I've seen the movie like twice before.
Yeah.
I love Wes Craven. I mean, he has done some other amazing movies. I mean, The Hills Have Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never seen that, is a great horror movie. Swamp Thing is awesome. Scream is one of the greatest movies of all time.
He's one of the cornerstones when it comes to horror filmmaking.
Yeah, and he knows how to make fun of himself. We should really do Scream this month.
Yeah,
speaking of which, because that is like, that could be a top 5 movie of all time. I know a guy who says it's number 1. I don't even know if I could fight him on that. It is incredible.
It's, yeah.
Point is, anyway, Nightmare on Elm Street. So, look, there's at the same token, there are a lot of things about this movie that don't hold up, and I think partly just my age, it's hard for me to fully ever get immersed in this movie. Same with like old Halloween. I find horror, when it's old, it has a hard time grossing me out, but that's not any fault of the movie itself. It's just the time it was working in. But there's somewhere it's super effective, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which kind of,
I also checked that one out a couple days ago.
Yeah, it took me aback. But Nightmare on Elm Street has great gore in it to an extent, but there's things that just look old and are always going to look a bit corny to me. But overall, like, I really enjoyed the movie. But what's your kind of like first exposure to this? I mean, you just saw the movie, but kind of to the series and the character of Freddy Krueger, because I feel like he's just a pop culture icon.
Last year, I really dove into watching a lot of horror films for October specifically, and I didn't get around to Nightmare on Elm Street, but I've seen Texas Chainsaw, and I've seen a couple of the Screams and a bunch of the Saw movies. The only like series I haven't really gotten around to was Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And I think that these movies change over time. Obviously when they first came out, they scared people, and they were really different for the time. And now watching them, they've just become really cheesy, raunchy horror films. But that's why we like them now, and that's like why we celebrate them, because they're just a good time,
And they're,
if you want something serious, this isn't it.
Yeah, I mean, and they're groundbreaking. There was nothing like this in the mainstream really before that. I mean, not this movie in particular, but this style of movie, just something that graphic and that that was still a relatively new thing that would still shock a lot of people. I mean, the character is just iconic. I've been aware of it since I was a kid. And there was always something creepy about it, but I would never say he was one of the ones that creeped me out the most. He's just some like
it's just interesting.
Like a burn victim in an ugly sweater. But I mean, I thought the claw hand, I mean the knife hand was always cool as a kid. But there were, I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker freaked me out more as an 8-year-old than like some poster of Freddy Krueger ever did. But I mean, just over the years, you hear the legend of the movie build. And I don't remember when I checked it out. I think I was in high school at
Yeah.
some point because I got into this obsession of, I think, trying to watch like just every movie that everybody says you should watch.
Yeah.
I was just trying to watch every famous movie there was. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I've seen some of the other ones in the series, and this is the only one that's genuinely scary at any parts.
Yeah. I I come to really like it and appreciate it because of how he exists in the dream world. And that's a lot different than, say, Texas Chainsaw or Jason or Ghostface or even more recent slashers like the Terrifier. These are all just people, whether they be supernatural or not, but they exist in the real world. And Freddy kind of has that gimmick of existing in the dream world. It kind of adds another layer of depth to it. It's just a bit more interesting than a lot of these other ones because it has that element.
Well, that's a great point, right? That element is what separates it, and it's very interesting, and it leads you to kind of question scenes in the movie as to obviously their reality and everything. But I wanted to start off just going from the top of the movie.
Sure.
So it opens with Tina Gray, right, being chased through like this boiler room maze that we've all seen, which Scary Terry from Rick and Morty has just, kind of ruined, which is kind of all I can think about at this point. I'm just watching and Scary Terry's coming for you. And, you can run, but you can't hide, bitch, and all that kind of stuff.
There's been so many spoofs of this whole Freddy Krueger thing throughout all pop culture now,
Yeah, because it really is a corny character. And that's one good thing about this movie. It does kind of mix it. He has some like fun lines.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, she's going through this like boiler room. Right. And one thing I noticed, this movie's kind of influence you can see in today's pop culture world, not even necessarily in movies. It reminded me of The Backrooms. That's what this kind of thing
Okay. Yeah.
It's just, and this boiler room that they keep going back to, it's like this room that looks familiar, looks like something you've seen before, but it kind of is just like a maze, and none of the hallways,
like a labyrinth.
Makes sense. And it just feels like you're always trying to get somewhere. And that in itself is already like makes you feel uncomfortable. And I feel like there were fans watching this back then who kind of realized that. And I feel like this is it's kind of what The Backrooms is kind of going for. That's what it reminded me of. And it's
a lot of people who have dreams, or nightmares find themselves lost in situations like this. They don't really know where they are, or they're in an area that feels familiar yet alien, and you turn a corner and you back where you're started again. So I like that it takes place in the dream world, and there's some realism behind how they approach dreams. I find that I've experienced a lot of these elements in my own dreams too. So I was trying to see what translates to I like how they portrayed the dream world, because everybody dreams and it can feel familiar. Like, oh, I've felt that before when I've dreamed,
They did it very well in capturing that. It looks similar to your world, but just something slightly off.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way you can tell. But of course, Tina wakes up and she's got the slash just from the fingers on her dress, which she's telling her mom about, and her mom's starting to think she's crazy. And it's like, oh, that's the slasher from the dream. So now we kind of know what we're dealing with here. And
takes it off.
Yeah, and she basically congregates with her friends, Glenn, played by Johnny Depp, and and his girlfriend, Nancy. Right. And they find out they're all kind of experiencing this dream. So they kind of decide to stay together to
I like how that all comes together.
Yeah. It comes together like pretty quickly and pretty easily. And I feel like partly why it does is because it's kind of it feels so smooth, because they do a good job of just seeming like every other 80s like high school movie. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like Johnny Depp, as far as this is his first big role, slips into it like perfectly. He's like already the high school good looking guy.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know he was in this. So when I started watching it, I was like, is that Johnny Depp, and I'm looking at certain angles. I'm like, nah, it doesn't look like him. But there's one shot where I'm like, that's absolutely Johnny Depp. So it was really cool to have him pop up without knowing that he was in this film.
Yeah, and it was his very early role. Like I think when he was still trying to be a musician.
I think he was about 20 at the time he did this.
Yeah, he's got to be around then. I mean, it works, you know. It's not like
Yeah.
he would definitely go on to better acting. But yeah, I just think it does a really good job at just feeling like a typical high school movie from that time.
It reminds me a lot of
Perfect.
Scream in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, Scream takes place in around a high school and it has to deal with high schoolers and a killer and whatnot in the town. But I liked the whole element. I don't know if we should like really get into spoilers. I guess we should. We could kind of like.
I mean, it's a 40-year-old movie almost.
Yeah. But I like how it comes together. How all these kids are somehow all tied together to Freddy somehow, and he's killing all these specific kids for a certain reason. They give Freddy some backstory too, and that really helps tie it all together. Like this movie is pretty consistent in its plot and its story, and I like that. It's not just some killer killing people because he wants to. You know, there's actually a reason behind what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's I feel like it sort of comes out of nowhere sometimes. It's like
It does. It does. And I
movie.
didn't. When the mother was explaining the whole premise of why Freddy's killing them, I thought it was a little far fetched. You know, it seemed a little bit out of left field.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, okay.
But that's fine. I actually caught the 2010 version
Cool.
a day ago or two, and it's a complete or an exact remake. You know, the plot is the same, a lot of the characters are exactly the same, everything is pretty much identical to the original film, just with a fresh coat of paint on it. I did not enjoy it as much as the original because it takes itself a lot really seriously. I like this original one because like, and since it takes place in the dream world, like Freddy's like making his arms super long, you know, he's morphing himself around. Like I like that because he can do that because he the whole aspects of dreams and whatnot, you know, they really let him run with it in the goofiness. And I like that, especially in my Halloween films. I like that type of thing.
And he's turning into cars in this movie and stuff like that. I mean, it definitely doesn't feel a lot more fun. I think a lot of it is just, it doesn't feel like it's trying as hard to be scary. Yeah. I feel like you get the vibe with the new Freddy Krueger. It's just trying so hard to be like, oh, and scary. That's why, like so edgy.
That's kind of why it fell flat for me. The newer one, he has a super deep voice, and like I really don't feel like it fits really well with Freddy. I really am a fan of this original Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I mean, it's I wonder if it would have been, sometimes I'm like, what if they held the secret till the later movies? Would that have made his character just like more mysterious as to like, and then would that makes him more freaky because now it's like, can that happen to me? Can that?
Yeah, that definitely could have like added some more longevity to the series and to the story if they let the plot, you know, drag through multiple films. Because then like this film works on its own really well. You know, it lays the plot out and there's resolve. But if they drag that resolve out into the second, third, or fourth film, it would have made this series as a whole a lot better.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's usually the case with a lot of these old horror films.
I think it's a fun movie, but I wouldn't say it's like one of my favorites, even as far as like gore and like special effects. Even if I'm comparing it to other movies at the time, like this is great for what it is. But I don't take it like, it's kind of a popcorn movie for me for the time. Like, and even like there's some great gore here. I love the stuff with the maggots coming out of him when he cuts himself that one time, or like you see a maggot coming out of one of the victims' mouths, or like a slug or like a worm. And there's, you know, a lot of blood, but like The Thing 2 years earlier. That stuff
Yeah.
is still, you watch that and that's just like, oh my God.
It really gets under your skin, and it's a really impressive film, like visually too.
Mhm.
I can really get behind the practical effects and whatnot of The Thing. Um, I remember the first time I saw it, I was just amazed, and just thinking about how much work probably actually went into creating those things.
It's just grotesque. It's absolutely
Yeah,
grotesque.
yeah, it's nasty.